Good afternoon. Welcome to the TechNation Tools of the Trade live demo featuring the EPA-4100 External Pacer Analyzer. Today, presenter Justin Barber, the Director of Business Development at BC Group International, will lead a live demo of the EPA-4100 External Pacer Analyzer. He will provide an overview of common cardiac conditions that require pacing therapy and review the clinical concepts behind different types of pacing. Participants will cover pacing terminology, demand modes, sensing, capture, and AV timing. The session will conclude with a demonstration of the EPA-4100 External Pacer Analyzer, highlighting its touchscreen interface, preconfigured pacer profiles, atrial and ventricular measurement, ECG connectivity, and methods for testing and troubleshooting external pacing systems. Thank you to today's sponsor, BC Group International, a biomedical test equipment manufacturer and distributor for over 75 brands of products. BC Group's flagship brand is BC Biomedical. BC Group sells direct and through distributors both domestically and internationally. BC Group provides equipment to medical device manufacturers, independent service companies, and hospital biomedical and clinical engineering departments. For more information, please visit bcgroupstore.com. Okay, now it is time for trivia. We will give away a multi-tool to one lucky individual who can correctly answer today's trivia question. August is National Sandwich Month. What is the most popular sandwich in the United States? Please submit your trivia answer using the questions feature in the GoToWebinar tools. All right, while everyone is sending in their answers, I want to remind everyone about the upcoming MD Expo in Orlando. Visit mdexpo.com for more information, and we will announce the winner of the trivia question later in the webinar. I want to remind everyone that today's presentation is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI. 1 hour after the end of today's broadcast, you will receive an emailed survey. Completing that survey will grant access to a certificate that you can download and print. We will wrap up today's webinar with a Q&A session. Please note that the webinar dashboard includes a questions feature. You can submit questions for Justin at any time during the demo. Justin, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Wow, excellent. Hey everyone. Sorry, this is kind of an impromptu setup because I am across the country over here in Hermosa Beach, California. And when I found out that I could finally go and talk about this new product, I just had to have it shipped to me so that we could do this. Regardless of the situation, we're going to do it live right now. Excuse my voice and stuff. I've been talking quite a bit. So with that, pacing and defibrillation, they're two different types of treatment. They require two different types of analyzers for the most part. And we're going to take this time to go over the clinical side and the technical side of pace testing. And there's so many details, and we are definitely not going to go over that all right here. I will be producing other videos on that on the Better Biomed YouTube channel where we go into a lot of depth. This is going to be kind of a features overview. And the one thing I want you guys to be aware of is this product is almost finished with development. We're still adding some features. In fact, I just updated the firmware, and there's some cool new features that were just added in the last week. So if you guys have any suggestions or any questions at any time about what we're doing, go ahead and flag us, and we will try and answer your question the best that we can. So with that, folks, let's go ahead and let's talk about pacing or cardiology in general, because the heart is a muscle, but unlike other muscles, it's fired like an explosion of electricity. And in doing so, it's going to operate a little bit differently than other types of muscles. And it can beat too fast, it can beat too slow, it can beat irregularly, or because it's got 4 different chambers, 2 atria and 2 ventricles, they could be out of sync. And since they're out of sync, your heart no longer has the maximum efficiency that it possibly could. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at some slides that I have for you all. All right. And I think that's up so you guys can see it. Okay, so we're going to talk about cardiac pace testing. Here you can see I've got an image of EPA-4100. It's a touch screen external pace analyzer. That's why it got the name EPA. And it's absolutely loaded with features, and it does a lot of computations for you, so you're not flipping through menus. It's a pretty cool tool. We're going to do an overview on camera so that you guys can see it live. But this is just a quick little view of what it looks like. So let's talk about the heart. So guys, like I said, the heart is a muscle that is fired via electronic signals, and that is through the SA node up there. And then it travels down through the heart and it fires the atria and the ventricles in a sequence, and that is the PQRS complex that you see right there. A normal human heart beats 60 to 100 beats per minute. Pediatrics and children, they beat much faster than adults. A normal resting heart rate is about 60 beats per minute for a healthy adult. The more your heart has to struggle, the more occlusion is in your veins, etc., the faster it might beat, okay? And a PQRS, this right here, is a pretty common rhythm right there. Any deviations from that standard are going to indicate some sort of health condition. So we all want to achieve the normal sinus rhythm, NSR, of that PQRS complex that you see right there. So let's talk about defibrillation, because some people have a misunderstanding of pacing versus defibrillation. Defibrillation, you can see I've got a couple examples over here on the right-hand side. These are what the heart is trying to do when it's trying to create that normal atrioventricular pulse. And you can see right here, it's just quivering. That's why it looks like random noise. It's not random noise, but the heart is not polarizing and depolarizing completely. It's just sitting there and it's partially squeezing and contracting. And so you are getting little to no blood flow whatsoever with ventricular fibrillation like you see here. Ventricular fibrillation, it needs to be defibrillated, which is why we have defibrillators. So the defibrillator, it will send a shock of energy into the heart, and it basically is like hitting the reset button, hopefully. And you can see down here, I also have pulseless ventricular tachycardia, which tachycardia and bradycardia are also a kind of symptom that can be pulsed through regular pacing. So normally it's fibrillation, but there's some other heart conditions that you can reset also with defibrillation. Pacing and defibrillation are two different things. Defibrillation is when you're trying to reset the heart electrically. Pacing is when you are telling the heart when to pace, and through the increasing or decreasing the amplitude, you're telling the heart how hard to squeeze. Pacing. So pacing is it's you telling the heart how fast you want it to squeeze and how hard you want it to squeeze. There's several different conditions that will determine what type of pacing you need. So we have tachycardia, which is when the heart is beating too fast. We have bradycardia, when your heart is beating too slow and you're not getting enough perfusion and you're not getting enough circulation throughout the body because your heart is not going fast enough. And with tachycardia, the heart is beating so fast that it doesn't have enough time to fulfill the chambers, because blood has to go from the atria to the ventricle, like over here on the left. And if the heart is beating too fast, you're only partially squeezing blood in and then you're squeezing it out immediately. That is a big no-go. Okay, so we want to maximize the efficiency of the heart, and that's why we control how fast each of these chambers will squeeze. And the next condition is asystole. We've all seen it, we all heard of it. Asystole is when there's not going to be any electrical cardiorhythm, and it's normally called the flat line. And you cannot defibrillate a heart that is on asystole. because there's no electrical signal there for it to reset. It's a common misnomer, and a lot of TV shows and movies get that wrong. But here we have an asystole. The thing about an asystole is we can actually pace the heart. So somebody that has, let's say, brain damage, or if they have cardiac damage, maybe with the nerves that wrap around the heart, you can get a asystole and the heart no longer wants to beat. But if there is treatment down the road, let's say a heart transplant or God forbid some other type of surgery, maybe even if this patient was going to be an organ donor, what they will do on an asystole is they will pace the heart to maintain circulation. So as the ventilator is breathing in and out of the lungs, you still need the blood to circulate throughout the body. So they will hook up a pacemaker, and that will the pump of the heart is still running. So it preserves the organs, because organs, they need blood and they need oxygen. In other words, everything starts to degrade really quickly. And down here, you can see we have AB block and some symptomatic slow rhythms. But the main takeaway is that pacing is you telling the heart when you want it to beat. So a lot of people think that pacing is the same with an external pacemaker as with a defibrillator, and it absolutely is not. External defibrillators are almost always transcutaneous, which means it's across the skin, and normally you're only going to be squeezing the ventricles, which means you're making the heart squeeze all at once, and then it lets go and it squeezes all at once again. It's for emergency uses only, and that's why you find them on defibrillators. There's a lot of features between, let's say, the Medtronic 5392 that you don't have on an external defibrillator pacemaker. So while your defibrillator analyzer does have a pace analyzer, it measures the amplitude and the frequency of your pulses, it's nothing like the complexity of the Medtronic 5392, where you have A, which is atrial, and V, ventricle. And what you're doing is you're controlling separate sections of the heart, which also means that you have to time those out correctly. Because if your atria and ventricle are squeezing at the exact same time, then you are actually just compressing the blood instead of squeezing it through the valves. So you have to give one enough time to squeeze, and then you're going to activate the next pace, which is going to be the ventricle, and you're going to give it enough time to squeeze so that the blood can successfully move between the chambers of the heart. So you can see over here, this is just a rendition. We have left and right atria, and then we have left and right ventricle. And you're going to see all that in just a moment when we pop over to the Medtronic. We're going to take a look at a pacemaker up close and personal. You should know that you can test the pulses of the Medtronic with a traditional defibrillator analyzer that tests paces. But all you're going to do is get the frequency of the pulses and the amplitude. So there's a lot of timing features and demand functions that you're not going to be able to test correctly. So just be mindful of that. I get that question all the time. Why would I need an external pacemaker when I have a defibrillator analyzer that can do that just fine? Well, that's because external pacemakers or temporary pacemakers are much more complex devices than the pacers that you're going to find on your local defibrillator. And we have some different modes for external pacing, guys. And this is where things get really complex. And we don't expect any of you guys to remember this stuff, but there are different modes that your clinical staff are going to use for pacing. And the important thing to understand about pacing is that there is demand and there's asynchronous pacing. So demand, it's looking for the heart to be trying to beat on its own or to be within a certain tolerance. And if it exceeds that tolerance, that's when the pacemaker takes over. And asynchronous, it doesn't matter what the heart's trying to do. You're going to tell it how fast to squeeze, and you're going to tell it how often. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. There's all different modes because you have 4 chambers of the heart. So sometimes you're going to be monitoring the atria to see if they're trying to squeeze. Other times you might be trying to monitor the ventricles to see if they're trying to squeeze, and that tells the pacemaker what it's supposed to be doing. And you'll see, we've got lights, little flashy LEDs on the pacemaker. That'll give you an indicator of what's going on inside the device. But you should be aware there are 4 different leads that come from the pacemaker. Sometimes you can also have ECG that come into it, so that helps it determine what's going on with the body. But there are different modes, and you'll see it abbreviated. Like here, you'll see VVI, AAI, AVAI, VVI demand. There's DDD. There are a whole bunch of these different modes, and just be aware, we don't expect anybody to memorize them. It is very difficult to remember, but there's only a couple modes that are pretty traditional. So we already talked about defibrillator analyzer versus external pacemaker. On the defibrillator analyzer, they cannot test the atrial output independently. That's very important to be able to switch in between one or the other. And it's also very important to be able to time those different discharges, which a traditional defibrillator analyzer cannot do. So you cannot measure the AV delay. Yep. And so we have all these different modes that I just talked about. We have all these different modes that I just talked about, and these are different modes that will be triggered inside the 4100 external pacemaker, and it will tell you what mode you have to have the pacemaker on, and it kind of walks you through some of the process. Very cool. Whereas your traditional defibrillator analyzer, it's just looking for a pulse width, and amplitude. So with all that being said, here are some of the main pacing modes that will be abbreviated, and I'll show you how to activate those on the external pacemaker. It's not very difficult to go in and select the different modes. It's kind of complex to try and understand what the mode is looking for. So here I have AOO, where you can see it says it's arterial paced. The next one is VOO, where the ventricular is paced. We have DOO, where you have dual chamber. So every time we say AVD, notice there is a little bit of a legend down here. A is atrium, V is ventricle, D is dual, and 0 is none. Okay, so these, the first letter up here signifies what is going on. Next one is whether or not it's being sensed. So you can see right here we have AAI, VVI, and DDI. So what it is the first one is which one is going to be paced, and then the second one is what's being sensed. So sense tells it it's looking for some sort of electrical activity, which tells the pacer whether or not it's going to be given a discharge. So we have arterial is being paced, arterial is being sensed, and then I believe is the tracking. So anyway, it's been a while since I studied this stuff, but the first two are the most important ones. So here you can see ventricular is being paced and V is being sensed. So it's looking to see whether or not the heart is trying on its own effort. And then you got DDI, which means it's pacing and sensing the entire heart. And then DDD is one of the most common modes you're going to see. In fact, I think the pacemaker starts up in DDD mode, and that's dual chamber, pace sensed, and tracked. And it's been a while since I talked about tracking of pacing, but anyway. And of course, VDD is ventricular, is paced, atrial sensed, and tracked. So it's very complex, I get it, but that's because the heart is a very complex electrical organ. So guys, that is a just brief synopsis of the menus that you're going to be seeing. Now, let's go ahead and let's take a look at the EPA-4100 up close so that we can go through the menus, and we'll also talk about a typical defibrillator or talk about a regular pacer like the Medtronic. And I have a Medtronic here. We'll hook it up and we'll see what those paces look like in real time. Okay. So let's go ahead and boot this up, folks. So here is the EPA-4100. This guy is very brand new to the market. In fact, it's not even for sale yet. And that is because these guys right here are just like defibrillator analyzers, and that you have to fill out a 510K, and it has to get filed with the FDA in its final form. And if you change anything about it, then you have to go all the way back through the 510K process. So let's say I wanted to add a whole nother menu option, I would have to go through the whole process. And it takes a long time, and it's a very expensive process. So this is a really good opportunity, guys. If there's something that you see or don't see and you wish that we had it on the system, go ahead and leave a comment, because I'm following all these comments and I want to know what you suggest we should implement, because this is not the final version. It's a good version, but it's not a final version. So if there's a mode or something that you don't see, go ahead and let me know. I will suggest it to the engineering team and we'll see what we can do. So you can see that we have two main menu options. We have transcutaneous testing and transvenous. So transcutaneous is when you have electrodes across the skin. Transvenous is when you're actually running them arterial into the heart. So you're pacing the heart tissue directly, which means it's going to be far more accurate and you're going to have a lot more pacing options. But transcutaneous is going to be very typical of what you'd find on most defibrillators. Transvenous is what you're going to find very typical of like this Medtronic system right here. On the main screen here, we have a button down here for your product page and your user manual. Now, these right here are just placeholders because, like I said, we cannot put a user manual online yet until it's in its final version. And when we do, that QR code will be valid. So the product page will tell you the stats on the product. We have onboard user manual. Just scan it with your phone anytime, anywhere, and you'll have full access to how to use that device. Here is the settings. Very simple. We have date and time. We've got Bluetooth. Guys, this is going to be a pretty cool thing. With MyBC Connect, what we can do is with MyBC mobile app, we can create a template for, let's say, this Medtronic here. And it will walk you step by step through the PM process using Bluetooth, and it configures all these menus. You won't even have to touch the buttons. It will just walk you through it. Now, I've seen some testing preliminary on that, and it's very fast. Like, it's extremely fast going through. It tells you what button to press and where you got to go. But be mindful, all BC Group's new products are going to be using Bluetooth. That's because we can do automated testing. And if you guys have never seen automated testing, it is so much faster and it's so much more accurate and reliable. Good stuff, guys. You can adjust the screen brightness down here, and we can set auto save, because when you're testing, those records will either be saved or discarded. We have it set for saving. And let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of these menus. So in here, we have various manufacturers that are pre-programmed. Mind you, we are definitely still adding some other ones as they come to market. But when you load one of these, there are going to be ohms, which are for that model specific, that are going to be pre-programmed. So you're going to be ready to go. You can see up here, it says that we're on GE McKay. And these are the different modes for that model. So right here, we have HP Agilent. Let's go ahead and let's go into other. And while we're doing it, let's go ahead and turn on the Medtronic. And let's experience an external pacemaker. And I believe these guys, yeah, they start up in DDD mode. So that is dual chamber, sensed, paced, etc. It is the full market. At the top of the pacemaker, you're going to see that we have atrial and ventricle indicators, and we have pace and sense. there's two different lights. So sense is going to be a blue light, pace is going to be green. Likewise, over here by A and V, you're going to have LED indicators showing when the analyzer is receiving a pulse. And that's going to help you because we always question things like whether or not our cables are correct. Well, if I see that I got a green pulse here and I'm receiving it over here on this side, then you know your cables are good and your device is ready to go. We have a power switch on this side along with USB-C for charging and data. And on the back side, we have our ECG snaps. We got banana plugs of 2 different sizes, and we got low profile stainless snaps there. So you can connect ECG for testing and other things, which is found down here. Let's go ahead and let's go into pulse. And we're currently pulsing on A and B. And I want you guys to take notice, right here are those flashing LEDs that I just said. So no more, I won't have to show you that anymore. But because I have this on a generic pacemaker, let's go ahead and take it down to 100 ohms. That's going to be pretty common for transcutaneous. Remember, transcutaneous means it's on the skin. So you're pacing through the skin, not direct. That means that your ohms is going to be pretty low. Over here, I have 80 ppm. I've got atrial 10 milliamp, and I've got ventricle 10 milliamp. But because of the mode that we're in, it's only sensing atrial at the moment. So as I turn up this dial, it is locked. Of course it is. As I turn up the dial, you'll see the milliamps increase on the screen, and you'll also see the ppm increase over here when I turn up the pulses per minute. So here I have it on 100 ppm and 20 milliamp. We have 100 ppm, 20 milliamp, and that pulse is good. It's very accurate. Now let's go back and let's start again. Let's go into transvenous and let's do a pulse output. And with transvenous, we can do the dual A and V. Now, mind you, I told you that this is the primary difference between a traditional pace analyzer that you find on your defibrillator and this, because this guy here can do the timing. You see, it says 140 milliseconds. That is found down here in the submenu of your Medtronic. And we can access that by coming down here, and we got AV interval, and we can turn this up. And apparently I turned it up to its black point. The maximum it'll go is 190 milliseconds. And that is the timing between atrial and ventricle discharges. So that is a long time. And what it's saying is, hey, that's not right, man. Because now you're conflicting with your next contraction. So let's go ahead and turn it down. Okay, and I think I have it at 70 milliseconds. That's pretty tight on the timing. And you can see right here, the interval is at 70, and I have 20 milliamps, and I've got 10 milliamps. That would be right here. A is 20, ventricle is 10, and you see it right there. Let's go ahead and turn this guy all the way up. Let's give it the full Monty. We got 20 milliamps on atria. We have 25 milliamps on ventricle. And you can see how fast the timing is on the EPA-4100. It is pretty quick. It goes all the way up to the max. And let's go ahead and let's turn the pulse all the way up as well. You see right here, the pulse rate at 200 ppm. I'm coming in at almost exactly 200 ppm. And mind you, at 70 milliseconds, that's really tight timings. So a lot of the menus are going to be accessed down through here on the bottom section. And the up and down are going to take you through your settings. And we're going to go down to mode selection. So in mode, I've got DDD, DDI, DDO. Now remember, I said D means dual chamber. The second one is what's being sensed. And the third letter is going to indicate whether or not it's being tracked. So DDD means everything's being sensed, everything's being pulsed, everything's being tracked. And you can see the flashy flash going on up here because this guy is just going absolutely nuts. Let's go and turn it down to something more reasonable. But that tests the full capacity of this guy right here because I had it absolutely maxed out on the pulses and on the amplitude. So if it was going to fail very highly, it was going to fail right there because your readings will start to track further and further from the standard as you're pushing it to its limits, because that's a lot of pulses. Let's go ahead and take this guy down to a very paltry 70 ppm. And let's take it down to 10 milliamp. Okay, 70, 10, 10, and let's go ahead and let's go down and let's change the AV interval back up to 100 milliseconds. The reason that I like testing things in 10s and 100s is because it gives you an instant 100% that you can mentally calculate. So at 100 ppm, 10 milliamps, I can actually see the percentage that it's off. So if it's off by 1, that means it's off by 1%. And you see right here, my rate is 99.9 ppm. That is extremely accurate. My interval is 100.2, 1.1. So it's 0.1% off. That is super accurate. So there you go. Down here, you can see the DDD that indicates my current mode that I'm in. And let's go ahead and let's change the modes so you guys can see some of the other things that are going on. Let's go to VVI. Okay, when you test something like VVI, notice how it's only going to ventricle, and notice also that atrial is disabled. I can turn it back on, but I'm no longer in VVI mode because all we're doing is we're pacing the ventricle, we're sensing the ventricle, and I think it is being tracked. But when we go in here, we're on ventricle, and actually you can see right here, ventricle, there you go. So we have ATR, that's atria, ventricle, or dual. If I pop it over on dual, you can see I'm only receiving on the vent side. So if you ever have a mode issue, remember, go back to DDD and see if your cables are working. Because if you're on something like VVI or AVI or whatever, you're disabling one of your channels. So you got 2 channels up here. They come down here. And you can also see down here, the V is pulsing. So that means that on the V, it should show something. Okay. We have demand mode. Demand mode is, as I said earlier, when we go in here, actually, let's set the mode back to DDI or DDD. Enter. Okay. Everything is back on at the 110s. And let's make sure that we're doing it correctly. Yeah, transvenous, demand mode. Okay. What we can do here is we hit start and it automatically calculates what your meter or what your pacer is doing. So you can see right here, it says, hey, you're at 100. You can underdrive and overdrive, and you'll see the blue lights flashing up here, which means it is sensing that the heart is trying to do something. So when we turn it down below the underdrive, you'll see that some of the pacing lights will stop. And that is because you're testing out whether or not the heart needs to be paced. So we can go to overdrive, and this way here, we're sensing the maximum. You can turn this guy up. You can see the status lights up here showing blue. That means it's sensing that there is a heart rate. And if we go over 115, notice how all of a sudden I start pacing, probably to slow that heart down, okay? So always pay attention to your indicators. They'll show what it's sensing, what it thinks the heart is doing, and the pace is showing that it's receiving the pulse. It's very important because The thing that this device is specialized in is determining whether or not the heart or a part of the heart is trying to behave as normal. And if so, if it's trying to do its normal job, we don't want to try and drive the heart because you actually could be creating complications. At the point that your heart is absolutely acting semi-normal, that's when we're going to check out on the defibrillator and see if it's fibrillating. So let's go back. We hit stop. You can see down here I have a save indicator, so I can save what it sensed. And we have async mode. We have refractory demand. And I want you to pay attention to right here. We have instructions on the beautiful touch screen with high resolution, and it tells you what to do. It says set pacemaker for demand mode, AAI or VVI. That would be this right here. So we unlock it and we go down. The modes, hit enter, and it says AAI or VVI. Remember, if it's AAI or VVI, that's whether or not it's atrial or ventricle. So you have to remember that, because if you have it on atrial and you actually set it at the VVI, you're not going to get much of a result. So just remember, A is atrial, V is ventricle. You can see down here, VVI. Let's go to AAI. Let's do that right there. Enter. Sorry if you can't see this too clearly. The Medtronic does have a kind of dimly lit screen, and it's really fine font, so it's not the easiest thing to show up on camera, but I'm doing the very best I can. It says select the channel below, set the waveform parameters below. We have submenus. We can go into wave. And here's where you can set up the different parameters of the wave. The width, its amplitude, set to 3 millivolts. And I don't pretend to know what all these are. I would assume is a triangle wave. And we can hit start. And what it's going to do is it's going to measure it. And I don't really know what the rest of the test does. Now, obviously, I haven't even been trained on this device for all its capabilities. What I can tell you is that it's definitely measuring for me to do something on this device, and I don't know what that is. But we can also adjust our load. And like I said earlier, we can change from atrial ventricle. And it's not going to show anything because remember, we're on AAI, which means that the atria is being paced. So we do have instructions built into the device. It tells you what to do, and then it tells you how to start the test. We have submenus down here for each of these. There are different conditions you can test for. Then you hit start, and it measures what it's receiving. We have line frequency. So here in the United States, we have 60 hertz, and we can actually adjust the amplitude. That's kind of cool. And we can also test for the ECG for its sensitivity. And down here, we can select between atrial and ventricle and also adjust the load. We have DC leak, DC load. I'm not going to pretend like I know what those are at this time. I'll do more videos on them in the future when I get a little more information. It is what it is, guys. Over here, we've got demand, non-capture, continuous, non-function, and this is for the ECG mode. Again, I have not done anything with this, and I don't have any ECG cables anyway to test out, so just is what it is. I'm just showing you guys the various screens associated with this analyzer. This guy is brand new. I've only had it in my hands about 3 or 4 days, and since then, it already has had one software update. Pretty cool stuff to see a product come into what it should be. Let's go into, let's say, Zoll, and here you can see that there's a few less items when you're doing transcutaneous. Nonetheless, you have all your ohms loads, and they are pre-configured according to the model. And you'll also get some simple instructions right here. Like it says, set pacemaker for demand mode, set load below to desired level, and then hit start. and you would do that. So just follow it along. So anyway, guys, this here is the EPA-4100. That is the External Pacemaker Analyzer 4100. I'm going to be doing probably several more videos on it. It is battery powered. It's got a lithium-ion battery cell in it, and you also have a charge indicator right here showing you what it's going on. Switch shuts it off quickly and easily, and here on the back we have a spot for our calibration stamp. But that is the final version of the product for hardware. So I just want you guys to get a first look. And I was super excited when they told me, hey, we're thinking about doing a live video showing the capabilities of this device. Now, I'm just curious if you guys have any other suggestions for what we might be able to make it do. This would be the time to try and figure out the device's capabilities. And like I said, I'm pretty excited about it, and I'm still learning about cardiac pacing and stuff myself, because to be honest, I've done surgery for 20 some years. We've tested external pacemakers, and until now, all of the external pacemaker analyzers are bare bones at best. Like, no instructions on how to use it. It's large, like segmented display, just horrible. Here we got touchscreen, we got Bluetooth, we can save records on board, we can automate some of the testing protocols. A lot of the testing protocols are already automated because we have the ohms loads for each one of them built in, along with model specific instructions for some of those steps. So guys, EPA 4100, I'm definitely going to play around with this one, and I would love it if you guys could give me any sort of feedback. Do you guys have any questions at all that I could help you out with?
We did have some questions come in, Justin.
All right, excellent.
The first question is, can the 4100 be used to test defibrillators if our defib analyzer doesn't have a pace testing option?
Absolutely. Here, let me go ahead and grab this guy. So here's the thing. Yes, you absolutely can. It's going to be the same input ports right here. Defib analyzers, you're used to seeing just 2 different ports, and this one here you got 4. So just be mindful, if you don't have a signal coming in on your ports, maybe it's currently set up for atrial, and you already seen on those menus you can select on atrial or on ventricle. So if you don't have a signal on these 2, you switch it over to these 2, and we made it super easy with that little LED light that flashes and it shows you whether or not you're receiving a pulse. If you're not receiving a pulse, I would check the defibrillator itself to make sure, but absolutely, this can definitely test it. Again, you're testing amplitude, frequency, and this guy can do all that and then some.
All right, excuse my pronunciation with this next question, but what is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous pacing?
Oh, okay. Synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous pacing is when it is examining the heart, and it's also demand mode. And asynchronous is when the doctor says, I don't care. Maybe somebody's got a failing heart, or their heart is irregular, or maybe even fading. And asynchronous is, I want this patient to beat at 60 beats per second, regardless of what his heart's trying to do. Now, demand mode is more typical for treatment, but when I got, sorry, I've got my daughter and stuff back here. She just got back. So anyway, synchronous is going to be typical. Asynchronous is when your doctor or cardiologist is saying, hey, this is the bare minimum I want this patient to hit, and I'm going to force the heart to do this. Sometimes synchronous and asynchronous. Asynchronous would be something like I mentioned, let's say somebody that unfortunately is an organ donor or something. You don't care what the heart's trying to do because it's probably not trying to do anything. You just want to continue sending a pulse at a very specific rate so that you know you're getting a certain amount of blood flow throughout the body.
All right, the next question is, how long will it operate on the battery, or how long does the battery last?
Okay, well, again, this is going to depend on what you're doing with the software. But I have used this thing for about 8 hours at the trade shows, capturing paces all day, and it still had plenty of battery left. So I don't know how invasive you guys are with your pacemaking testing, but so far I've gotten at least 6 to 8 hours on this guy. And as we come out with new software revisions and stuff, depending on all the computational needs of what you're trying to do, it still goes pretty much all day for you. So like I said, it's got a lithium ion battery, it's got USB-C, and it's high-speed USB-C. So you guys out there that have newer cell phones, you know that there's slow charging and fast charging. Fast charging right here all day. It's good stuff.
All right. And the next question, I think you touched on this already, but what are the different pacing modes we test?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of them, and the the thing that you should be mindful of is the three letters. They actually indicate something. So the first one is what is being paced. The second one is what is being sensed. And the third one is what is being tracked. Now, I'm going to do videos that go into detail on those because you really need to see like waveforms and stuff in order to completely understand it. But just be mindful online, there are entire charts showing the different things that you can do. In fact, I will leave some of my images. I will post them publicly so that you guys can learn a little bit about cardiac pacing, because it's a very complex structure. You have 4 different chambers and they are all electrically different. Like you have to discharge one, then you discharge the next, then you discharge the next, and then discharge the next. And it's this myriad of dancing muscle. And that's why we have 4 different channels. We have atrial and ventricle that are separate channels. And it's because they have to time it out perfect. The body's a wonderful thing, guys.
All right. Another question we have, and I'm not sure if this is a typo or not, but what about SA node? How does that work? I don't know if they mean SA
Oh,
node or SA mode.
SA node. Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's see. That is a really good question. Hold on, let me pull it back so that we can go to that. And let's do that. Can you guys see it correctly?
Yes, we see it.
Excellent. Okay. So over here, you can see the SA node and the AV node. Those are electrical start points within the heart. And you can see up here, the SA node, they call it the pacemaker, and it sets the rate for everything else that happens throughout the heart. And I went into a video on this on the Better Biomed YouTube channel, and I will probably go into some more detail when we talk about intravenous pacing, because it's such a complex and amazing topic. The fact that they can shove electrical probes right down here, comes through the valve into the heart, and it fires electrical signals inside the heart internally instead of externally. I would imagine it would be more comfortable to be transvenous paced than transcutaneous, because if you can imagine electrical probes being placed on the outside of your body and you're sending zaps through your skin, that's going through all your surface layer nerves and it's zapping the heart itself way on the inside. It takes more energy to do transcutaneous than transvenous because you're still trying to activate this neural network that's in here. So just be mindful of that. Transvenous, where they shove a line in here and expands and they can pace out the heart internally. It's going to be more comfortable for long-term pacing for the patient. And transcutaneous on the outside of the skin, I have been told that it's painful. Trust me, I don't want to know, but that's from what I know. Guys, these nodes right here, there's some excellent videos on YouTube, not even my videos. There's way better ones by cardiologists and neurologists that discuss this relationship between heart tissue and the nervous system. And imagine trying to design something like this guy right here that's simulating all that and taking measurements. What a precision measurement instrument. So just be aware that there's a lot of parameters it's trying to measure all at the same time, and it's super fast. It's in a split moment of a second.
All right. Thank you for that. And then I want to encourage people, if they have questions, now's the time to ask. I do have a question here. can we buy the 4100 now? So that's a good question to answer.
That is an excellent question. Okay, guys. So we have this guy in its final form factor, but the software is the part that is still being developed. We're still adding stuff to it, like pre-formats for other different types of pacemakers and stuff. As we add stuff to this, we're looking at Q4 of 2026. I would say that, or maybe Q1 of 2027, we will have the 510K approved by the FDA, and this guy is going to be on fire. Now, after the AMI Expo, the exchange, we had so many people reaching out wanting this pace analyzer, and guys, at the moment, we cannot sell it. We cannot even tell you the price for it, although I promise you, it's an extremely competitive price. And to be honest, I don't know of any other pacemaker analyzers that are current, because some manufacturers quit making them years ago. This is kind of it. So since this is the only one really that's going to be on the marketplace that has new features and stuff, we are trying to put as much stuff into this thing as possible so that it guides you through most of the process. And we're going to have educational videos showing you each and every different types of testing. It's going to be pretty cool, guys. But look for Q4 of 2026 or maybe even Q1 of 2027.
All right, thank you, Justin. Thank you for sharing your knowledge today with the TechNation community. The winner of today's multi-tool for correctly answering the trivia question is Katie Green in Washington. The correct answer was grilled cheese. Now, a quick reminder that you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed in 1 hour. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you will be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us through email at webinar@mdpublishing.com, and a recording of this webinar will be available on webinarwednesday.live later this week. Thank you so much for your attention today, and have a great day.